Well, I hope we have some folks join us today. Hello.
Hi.
Hi there. I only see your name as 963080375-702.
No, I need to do something in settings and I haven't figured out what it is yet.
Oh, is that Kay? There you are. You did it.
Did it?
Well, I think there were about 6 people signed up on Facebook to join us today, but we didn't do as much boosting as we did of the one for Tuesday. And if we don't have other folks joining, we may have a different kind of, okay, so 3 people are watching on Facebook Live, in addition to those of us here. And I think we should just give it a couple of minutes. So I've set up a new little way to do this today.
Wow, look at you, just going all over the screen.
I tell you, yeah, this is my creative way. See, I can do this, and I've done this so that in telling folks who've joined us now who Parents for Public Schools is, I thought it'd be a little bit more interesting for them to see some of the words at the same time I talk about it. And I guess we should go ahead, even though we've just got 3 folks watching on Facebook Live and a couple of us here. This means we'll probably be able to go into a lot more depth and look at some other questions beyond just the first discussion of how each person's feeling right now about their experience. So first of all, we wanted to be sure that everybody knows who we are. Parents for Public Schools of Hawaii is a nonprofit, and our goal is to support public education equity and excellence. And we were founded 11 years ago in response to Furlough Fridays. We work in a number of ways. We improve and support public education by increasing family and community engagement, surveying, informing, holding school and virtual events, and conducting parent engagement training. And we work with key decision makers to advocate for policies that increase education opportunities for parents, families, and children. We do this with our parents, and we also directly represent family views and needs to the Board of Education, Department of Education staff, and to legislators. And as a member of a coalition supporting excellence in education and the Hawaii Children's Action Network advocating for children and the broadband HUI, we work for digital equity for all Hawaiian families. We're currently working hard to support school community councils, and we're holding these school and COVID talk story events to hear family concerns and hopes. We hope that any of you listening will join PPS, and all you have to do is to go to our website, ppshi.org, click join, and you'll receive newsletters, surveys, and updates. You can also see us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube, and we have not yet hit TikTok. So I wanted to just thank you all for joining us today. We are really impressed by the number of families and parents and other nonprofits who've been reaching out, all of us concerned for the safety of our students, our teachers, and our families. And so we thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to learning from you what your concerns are. We feel really lucky to be here in Hawaii, where we can join in a talk story and know that a feeling of aloha is there, great respect for all the parties to these difficult problems. But we're looking forward to hearing the very open and raw experiences that each of you have, and to hearing your concerns, your hopes, and what you're pleased about as we're going through this tough COVID time. So we're going to really have enough time for each of you, and if those of you on Facebook, I don't think you're able to speak up, but if you want to join the Zoom call, you could join so that you can speak up, because otherwise we're not going to be able to hear your views. Chelsea, could you put the link to the Zoom in the chat? Will the Facebook folks see that so that they could?
Yes. It's
Good.
in the comments and it's on the Facebook Live post. The actual post itself, there's the link to it.
Great. Okay. Well, if you folks watching on Facebook Live could please join the Zoom call. We'd love to be able to hear from you. And nobody has to worry about, whether their statement is perfect or anything like that. We're just looking for really how each of us are feeling, what we're experiencing, what we're seeing as we go through this time. So I will start with my feelings and concerns. And I've been really impressed by how hard everybody's working, from our teachers to our families to the administration, trying to find ways to make it through this difficult time. But I also am very concerned that I worry that we don't have enough discipline and planning to really protect our students and our teachers. And we've got so much change happening that it feels like we have to be very flexible and quick to move to respond to the actual situation. So that's my first thought on how I'm feeling. And I'm going to go around to each of you on the call so that we can hear what you're thinking. And because we don't have many outsiders, you're going to get to hear some of the thoughts from Parents for Public School board members who are on this call, and all of whom are very working hard to understand this and help. But why don't we start with you, Selena Lee? Could you share with us, do you have kids in school, and what's going on for you in this time?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I have three children in public school. I have a middle schooler who just entered 6th grade, and I have two high schoolers, one in 10th and one in 9th.
Huh.
So they all did the distance learning, no in-person last year, completely full distance learning. This year I had my middle schooler, I told them that she was not going to come back until she got vaccinated, which is at the end of October when she becomes eligible due to her age. So that would leave her not returning in person till maybe December 1st. And two high schoolers went to orientation day. It did not go well. My 9th grader was traumatized. They went to the first day of school just to kind of see how it was. We never sent them back because the atmosphere was just too much. Just the only difference is they're wearing masks. And we have been self-isolating away from everybody, only going out for essential needs, and to send them into that kind of atmosphere that we've been told all this time to avoid. Yeah, so they're at home now. We switched them to virtual.
Could you describe a little more about what the traumatic situation was at school? What kinds of things were happening that distressed your kids specifically, so that we all understand?
So we went to, or I dropped her off at orientation day. The orientation was done. It started check-in at the not auditorium, in the gym. Well, it was like a concert was happening. Just the mass crowd. There was no adults monitoring.
Wow.
All those photos we've been seeing at the airport where just the tourists are just jam-packed waiting to be checked in. It was like that. They didn't have the kids separated. They were all together, just bunched up. Classes were full. Recess and lunch was just free for all.
Wow. Which high school is this?
Mililani.
Huh.
Yeah. classrooms, regardless if they have AC or not. Doors, windows in some classes were closed. Desks were touching.
Oh, boy.
Students were facing each other. My ninth grader said there was only one teacher that was very adamant about, hey, put your mask on correctly, stop moving the desks around. He was the only one out of all 8 teachers that she saw that first day of school. Yeah, my 10th grader, she has anxiety, and it takes a lot for her to feel good in school. She's had school refusal for years and years in elementary and middle school. And she could not sleep after that first day. We were going to send them the second day just to kind of see like if it gets better or if they can just, kind of put themselves in their own personal bubble and just kind of get through the day and just stay away from people when they could. She couldn't sleep. She was up till 5 o'clock in the morning, just thinking there's no way that I can go back there. And so the thing about it is that we were not going to send them back to school, but because the school was only offering their virtual option, which is something that they've been working on for years, just so happened it coincided with COVID. It's a completely virtual program where they're just logging on, like the colleges have, where it's just completely virtual. You just log into a platform and you just do the work that pops up in the course.
There's no teacher back and forth?
There's no teacher, which they did good at last year. In the beginning, my 10th grader did a CELIS, and so did my 6th grader last year. That didn't do so good for my 10th grader. So in the middle of the school year, she opted for the hybrid where you go on asynchronous, synchronous learning, which she did good at. My 9th and 10th grader were hoping to have that because that was a good setting for them. But because the high school had they offered the virtual program this year. That's the only option that they're providing. No distance learning, no different model. It's just in person or virtual. The sad thing about
what is the virtual that they're being offered?
It's Edgenuity. So Mililani High School, their virtual platform is they're using Edgenuity, and then what is that called? Shawnee, what is that other class that you guys? Oh, advisory, and then for them the modern history of Hawaii is just based off of Google Classroom. Yeah. So
is a teacher leading that in Google Classroom?
So it's the same thing like when you have classwork waiting for you in Google Classroom, it just appears there, and then you do it when it's assigned, when it's due. The good thing about it is they have a teacher of record. So there's a teacher assigned to each class, each course that's in Edgenuity and on Google Classroom. And if they monitor the students every day, so if they see that they're not making progress or they haven't logged in, they'll call. So they're pretty on it. And, so far it's okay because my 10th grader, who we kind of were worried about, she's been doing okay. She's been getting through the lessons okay. It's way different than a CELIS. So she's been independent and self-directed for that. For a CELIS, I had to sit and do the lessons with both of my girls. And for my 6th grader, I had to watch all the videos and write down everything and then teach it to her because both of them have an IEP. So the bad thing about it is there is no special education component. There's no IEP services being done, which, we are okay with that because we would rather have them home safe. We went into it knowing that what we were getting into, but our first option was they're not going to school. And so we would take whatever they gave us, and if it wasn't working for us, then we would have to homeschool them, because sending them is not an option.
So right now, all three of your children are doing distance learning. And
Yes.
do they have, if they decided to go back in the winter, would they be able to re-enter in person, or do you have to make that decision for the whole year?
So for the Mililani High School virtual option, it's a year commitment. They can go back after a year. The good thing about it is that they are still on track to get a diploma. It's not considered, they're still a part of the school community. So that was the only thing, because my two daughters at Mililani are on a GE for my 10th grader to be there with her cousins. She has a medical GE. We were kind of, going back and forth because we really want her to be in school. Both of them, like my 9th grader, she's advanced. She does really well in school. The teachers always advance her into the higher groups in class. So I didn't want to lose that and have her be so bored, which is already happening with her lessons, because so far everything she's logged into, she already knows. So we're going to give it some time and see if it advances itself, kind of like how iReady kind of just takes what the kids put in and then adjusts to what they answer.
Yeah.
If not, we were hoping that maybe they can bump hers up a little. I'm not really sure how that works, but the information that we were given for the program, it seems to be changing and not really aligning with what they've told us so far. And we're a little surprises that have popped up. So we're just making do with it right now, because our whole thing is, number one, they're not going in. So we're trying to make it work.
How about for your younger daughter? If she decides to go back in January, would she be allowed to go back into in-person school, or does she have to make?
Yes.
She could.
So with her, I had told them that she's not coming. So what they are offering is packets. So her situation is just like for kids who are on an extended medical leave, which is what we were hoping and begging for last year, even with the high school this year, but they said they would need a doctor's note, which our doctor would not do that. But that's what she's doing. So she has packets, she has Google Classroom assignments. She has, although she does not have services for behavioral health specialists, we were heading down that route when she goes back in person. But they had offered to provide that services, even though she's not officially has it on her IEP. So he's been calling regularly. Every time I email the teachers, they're on it. They're still honoring that she has an IEP. But basically I'm her teacher. So I'm showing her the work and trying to work with her to get her to do the most she can, because I know in class she would get more breaks or modifications and things like that. So
Great.
yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for all that information. It really helps us to find out, what's happening in various schools, because it seems to be different for different schools, different grades, different teachers, different kids. So we're keeping track of this information. Thank you. And we'll be able to get back to you later too. For the rest of you who just joined a few minutes ago, we talked a little bit about what Parents for Public Schools is, and we are working to try to get equity and excellence in our schools, and we are constantly trying to help parents and families to be more engaged, because we know that makes a huge difference in the quality of education and engagement for their students. So I'd like to go on to Stephanie. We're just asking each of you to tell us a little bit about what you are experiencing. There's, is it Mio-Chi? Is that your name, Mio-Chi? I guess you're the next one up, and then Stephanie after that. If you can share with us your experience, we'd just like to hear, do you have kids, and what are you finding with the schools right now.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, first of all, English is my second language, so please bear with me. So I have a high schooler who attends one of the DOE high schools around here. He was doing hybrid last year, and then this year they only offer like in person, so he's going to school full time. And this high school has hundreds and hundreds of students, like a typical, lovely high school, maybe more than like 1,000, maybe 2,000. And he said in some of his classes, there's no, like zero social distancing. And for example, in his English class, there's so many kids in the class, their desks and chairs are almost touching each other's. And the teacher told.
I couldn't quite hear that, Mio. Are you saying that he's in person in class, and what school is it that he's in?
He goes to Roosevelt High School.
Uh-huh. And were you saying that he's having to sit very close to other students in class?
Right. In some of his classes, there's zero social distancing. For example, in his English class, there's so many students in the classroom. Their students' chairs and desks are almost touching each other's. And the teacher even told the students, I don't really like the settings, but I don't really have any options, so we have to just deal with it. And also like lunchtime, I think school lunches are provided free to everyone. So a lot of kids just rush over to the cafeteria at the same time, and they're just swarming in the cafeteria. So he's just so scared. And I pack home lunch for him every day, but he said there's no regulations, rules during lunchtime. So kids just eat whoever, wherever, just usually like clumped together. So that is, I was really shocked and hoping that this school would implement some kind of regulations. So I wrote to the principal, the area superintendent, board of education, and a couple other people, but nothing has been done. And I was telling my son, if they offered hybrid, would you consider that? And he said yes, but the school said we're not offering online or hybrid. So if you don't want to come to our school in person, you have to go somewhere else. But he's really proud to be a Roosevelt High School Roosevelt student, and changing school for him now would really scar him mentally, and that's not what he want to do. As a teenager, it's really not a good idea to force him to do something he doesn't want to do. So it's really difficult. He understands that by going to school, he might contract COVID and spread it, within the family. But at the same time, he doesn't want to change school. So that's our kind of a dilemma.
So is he pretty worried? Is that making it hard for him to study, or what would you say his state is in your state?
Yeah, I think studying is okay, but he said he can't really drink water because he's not allowed to take off the mask, and he only has so many minutes to move from one classroom to another. So he barely drink. Yeah, he's super dehydrated throughout the day. So I just have to remind him to drink water when he's at home.
Good. Thank you, Mio. Stephanie, can you join us and tell us what your experience is, and if you have any kids in schools?
I don't have kids. I teach at an elementary school.
Good.
I'm a special ed teacher. We set our classroom up for 3 feet apart. Students in my classroom all face forward. That's one of the guidelines that we got for arranging our classroom. Elementary school kids, there is, at first as you all may know, the elementary school students, there was no total distance learning program available at the elementary level. Is everybody else understand that or aware of that?
That there's no distance learning available for
No.
elementary?
My statement was at the beginning of the year, we were told that there was no total distance learning for the elementary level. That's what was sort of a said statewide, correct? Or
Mhm. Yes.
everybody else heard that? So it turned out, like, I guess the first week of school with children back, there was a notification that came up, I guess, over the weekend from Honolulu that there would be a total distance learning. And by the time parents found out about it and could apply, they're on a waiting list.
Uh-huh.
There weren't that many openings K through 12. And for some students, even the notion of being in school with their asthma or something that would, be a concern for a parent, they didn't have the option to even consider that. And now they opened it up and it wasn't adequately thought through, for lack of a better word, to recognize that there might be a lot of parents who are worried about it because all summer the Delta variant has been popping up. And perhaps Maui is experiencing the same thing that we have on Kauai. We've had a huge amount of new people coming on the island, many of whom don't seem to be as concerned about wearing masks. So even if we wanted to support parents, we sort of were put behind an 8 ball at the school level with being able to support that kind of program. The other thing is, we're not at a capacity to really teach synchronous learning, which would be teaching online and all just face-to-face at the same time. My personal preference is to teach face-to-face because, that's why I teach. I like being with the kids, like seeing them. It was hard to do the all distance last year. Being in SPED, there were exceptions made to the rule, so to speak, because I had some students that just wasn't their medium. It just wasn't connecting. So we pulled them in with whatever safeguards we needed to put in place. And then eventually by April, actually by the end of March, I had all my SPED students coming in, even if they weren't able to participate in the general ed classroom. And that seemed to help, but we had some great parents that got the kids online last year. And if we have to go back that way, I hope they're able to do that again. I mean, maybe they're back at work. We don't have the same scenario we had last fall. In 2020, we were much more locked down on Kauai. I guess as an overall comment, I'm a little shocked that since May 2020, we've been dealing with this, and the DOE and the governor hasn't really, nothing, and just nobody's thought it through, and nobody's prioritized getting the kids back in school, making sure it's safe and they can get an education. And that's been really frustrating to me. I know my immediate administrators are really, great. We're doing all we can at our school, teachers, everybody. Some teachers can't get vaccinated for health reasons, but they're still in the classrooms. But, it's just been frustrating that at a state level, it hasn't been well thought out, including a distance learning program that they suddenly came up with as an option that could barely address one island, let alone the entire amount of students that needed to make use of that. And everything for a statewide school district, everybody seems to be doing something different somewhere. It seems like Honolulu gets more stuff going on than the rest of us. And, you know, so.
Stephanie, one of the things I've heard from teachers, I just like to ask you to continue to comment on this, is very hard to be teaching distance virtual class at the same time you're teaching students in person.
Yes.
And usually, you know, people have spoken more positively about the synchronous virtual learning when there's a teacher online doing it through Zoom or WebEx, but relating synchronously. But the problem is if they have to simultaneously do virtual and face-to-face. And so it's making some of us wonder, why aren't some teachers allowed to do just the virtual synchronous?
Well,
And
that can be, yeah, excuse me, that can be done. And I think part of it is, you know, that can be decided at different schools. I believe they did have some teachers who just did the teaching online, and then other teachers were teaching face-to-face. I think that's how some schools worked it out last spring when we could open up all the way. But the hard part with SPED is, you know, we're working with small groups in the first place. We're not even getting a whole group of kids in. And so we're already working in an individual education plan. So we're working with either small group or individualized instruction sessions for that. So it's a lot, plus, you know, SPED's infamous for their amount of paperwork that you do in addition to everything else you're doing.
yeah,
And online learning requires a lot of lesson planning and a lot of creation of material that you may, especially if you're an older teacher like me, you may have found a lot easier to generate standing at the Xerox machine at 6 o'clock at night, instead of, you know, making this little packet and then this little packet, you know, to come up with. It's a lot of work. But I think what impressed me, not impressed me, but struck me very strongly this year, back that first week of school opening, was I really felt that once again, as a statewide school district, the DOE was not prepared. And I was, you know, we will do what we can to make it work, but it's sort of disappointing, for lack of a better word, that they weren't prepared for what seemed very apparent from May, when that first Delta virus, you know, when that first started popping up in the news. It was almost as like, that's not going to happen. And how could it not happen with Hawaii being a place where so many people come anyway, you know?
yeah.
But I'm not even thinking that, I'm saying that out of hindsight as much as like, where's the planning?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Stephanie. Kate, join us.
Yeah. What my concerns are?
Yes. Your
Well,
experiences and concerns and hopes.
Yeah, you know, I work with a lot of teachers out on the Waianae Coast. And so it's interesting to listen to parents and teachers from other, you know, in other complexes, because I've just sort of been struck by the absence of options. And that's not to say that, I mean, I understand this is just a really crazy time, and I wouldn't want to be an administrator. And I think teachers are carrying such a heavy load and so much pressure on them, and parents also. But yeah, I'm very interested. And, you know, that there's this theme about options that keeps, you know, popping up. So that's all I have, Deborah. Thank you.
Kay, I've been hearing a lot of reports about the need for volunteers in the Waianae and Nanakuli areas, that teachers are out, and it sounds as if that might be the most highly impacted area by COVID and problems. What's your perception of it?
It is. It's, we just did a 3-hour PD with Waianae teachers this morning, and they're exhausted. I mean, one of the teachers, said, geez, it's just 3, they're exhausted. And the principals are exhausted. And the work that we do is connecting learning to community. And we're trying to, as if a teacher can get out, we're going to work with them. But because the COVID numbers are so high, just the verification about, everybody's checking everybody. If you come in contact with a child, so there, and that's, that's completely understandable, but it's kind of crazy.
I've been hearing that people from the main office are needing to go out to Waianae to step in and help, which makes one think, oh dear, what's going to happen next week? Are they going to be able to send enough people? Is there a feeling of anxiety about that there?
I don't know. I know that our work with the teachers is just generally it's 3 weeks into the school year and they're exhausted.
Thanks, Kay.
Yep.
Peggy, you've just joined us, and I'm not sure if you were listening in from Facebook, but just to let you know, we're just having each person speak up to tell us a little bit about their experience and what their concerns and hopes are, whether there are any high spots and what the biggest worries are. Could you share a bit with us? Do you have kids?
Sure.
Teacher, what's up with you?
So I actually, I have a 5th grader in one of the public schools, and I have a job in a private school, actually.
Hmm.
And I am COVID averse. I'm scared of COVID, but I have to say I'm also really incredibly grateful that my child is in school right now. So I feel like I appreciate so many sides of this coin, and that I am working in a school where we're sending kids home every day. We have teachers who are jumping between online and in person. And I also have a child who is an only child, and every day that he's in school, that he can play with other kids, that he can receive in-person instruction, I'm so incredibly grateful for it. So I guess I was just really interested in being here to hear what other people's concerns were. I'm curious to know if there are kind of rumors about the schools just going online altogether. And I guess my other thought that I would share is I am so incredibly grateful for Jollity windows in our public schools, because who knew they would play such a great role in providing ventilation. So that's all, nothing super deep.
Yeah. We've got a couple of questions coming in the chat line. One is, if a student is on a 1-year distance learning option, which only has core courses, will they have enough credits to advance to the next grade level, since electives are not available online? I don't know the answer to that. It would seem that they would need more credits, and I don't know if there might be distance learning programs outside of the one option they're taking. Do any of the rest of you on the call have an answer to that question? One of the things we've been hearing is that, related but not the same question, that if parents need to take students out of district learning because there is no distance learning option for them and they don't feel safe with them going to school, if they bring them into homeschooling, we're hearing that they have to stay homeschooled for the full year. And some of the parents are nervous about whether the kids will get to go to the next grade level. And that's because the kids will be required to take the state testing if they're going to come back into the school system again. And so some people are just worried that they might not test well enough to come into the next grade level. So that doesn't sound like an absolute rule. It just is that kids will have to show what they know to get back into the system, is what I understand. Does anyone else have any other information on either of those 2 points?
I don't have any information on the testing, but my question is, have they set a score that would say you couldn't advance to the next grade level? Because less than 50% of our students pass that test. Just,
Good
you know.
point. Good point. We're gathering questions that we don't know the answers to, and we're hoping to put up a list of FAQs, frequently asked questions, on our website. And so we'll gather these and go and research it and try to get answers. And that's a really good question about the cut point. Another question in the chat is whether testing is going to happen in the schools according to Lieutenant Governor Green's claims. And they wonder whether getting students tested as a mitigation strategy per the CDC guidance. And I did hear Lieutenant Governor Green on a Facebook chat this morning answering a question about this testing. And he was noting that testing is now set up for free at pharmacies all over the state. And so one of the things we were going to put into our FAQs is the list of all the places that you could go to get testing. But I don't know if there being a set plan about how frequently kids below 12 would be tested, or what the requirements for vaccinations or testing above 12 would be. Does anyone else on the call have any specifics about those issues? Okay, another question. Someone's asking whether the DOE is going outside of state to try to hire more distance learning teachers who might have to move here first when there are certified teachers already out on disability. I've heard, and I don't have a confirmation, but I've heard that the district is hiring out-of-state teachers to teach distance learning classes. And I've also heard that there are teachers who are out on disability who would like to teach distance learning and are not yet able to do that. So that's something we need to research. And we heard HSTA comment on that a bit on the Keiki caucus the other day, but we'll try to track that down more too. So if any of you asking these questions on the call that we're not able to adequately answer now, we'll check back in a few days on our website, ppshi.org. We will try to get all the answers we can. Lois, could we ask you to speak up? You are the last one on our active list. We've had a couple other people online who've dropped off, been on for a bit, but have dropped off. And Lois is our longtime president of Parents for Public Schools and professor at the College of Education, and really glad she could join us today.
Sure, and thanks everyone for coming. I've been so impressed by people's comments, and I've learned a lot. I especially have been appreciate comments from the high school parents. I guess when I was thinking about students going back to school, and I have to say that my kids went through the public schools in Hawaii, as I did myself, but my kids are now, one is in college and one is graduated from college. So that's how much time we've been, it has passed since we started PPS Hawaii. But I was very concerned about elementary students not being vaccinated. And of course, the issue of not having enough space in the high school and maybe the middle schools, but I think the crowding really is at the high school levels. So mostly, and so that is something I appreciate hearing about, and I hope there's something that we can do, or at least we can express to policymakers and administrators to try and really target that. It sounds like, there needs to be more supervision and adherence to the CDC guidelines. So that's my general feeling. I agree with Stephanie. As a college teacher and a former classroom teacher, I do agree that face-to-face instruction is really the best. But given that we're in the middle of a pandemic, I think we need to think about options, and we need to, and it's not easy to do what Deborah was explaining of, both, and I've done this with adults, but with children, it would be very difficult to have, students in front of you and students online. That's really difficult. So thank you.
Thank you, Lois. And Lori, we've just seen you join. I don't know if you've been watching on Facebook and know what we're doing, but we'd love to have you tell us a little bit, like the other people have, about what your situation is, whether you are teaching or have kids, and what the experience of COVID in the schools is for you. Lori, could you unmute and speak up?
Hi, I just joined. I saw the email and thought I'd listen in, but I'm a substitute teacher, and I've only taught at Maui Waena, and there's concern. I mean, there's so many kids and so little space, and they're having to switch classes, but the staff, they're doing the best they can. All kids are really being monitored, and they're being masked. I think the administration is doing all they can from separating kids, but there are just so many of them. And the desks, they're keeping them apart. And the kids, they're all excited. My kid is happy to be in class. I think we're just all doing the best we can.
Thank you. We've been gathering the feelings of other people through other talk stories and through emails and texts that we're getting. And these are some of the responses that we're getting, and they're all over the map, just like some of the things we've been talking about on this call are. But we're using these comments on today's call and the past calls to guide us in sharing information with other people. We are finding these ideas kind of go from happiness and delight that we finally are back in person, and appreciation for how hard our teachers and administrators are working, understanding it's really hard for the DOE, especially with the leadership change in the middle of the crisis. But then we get more into the worries and concerns that folks are having about safety, and about actual situations with kids being afraid to take off their masks at lunch, and kids being stressed and worried about coming, and parents being worried that with in-person learning, with the quarantining that's happening in some cases, that the kids may miss even more school than they miss going to distance learning. So that's getting to be a progressively more difficult problem, it seems, as more infections are happening. Close contacts of those students are being sent home and have to be out for 10 days. It's a difficult thing. One of the biggest things we're hearing, we've heard on this call too, which is surprise that given what we've gone through in the last year and a half, that the DOE didn't think they needed a plan for alternatives, that they thought we could just go back all in person. And so we're kind of feeling that we hear that we need a plan, we need consistency, so it's not different at each school, what you can do, and families need options and flexibility. I'm running this by you all so that any comments you have on this, you can get us, because we're trying to bring feelings together. This is a list of some of the FAQs that I'm going to look at trying to get on our website in the next couple of days. Meanwhile, we've come up with a statement of what we would like to see come from the Department of Education at this point. And we basically say, we believe face-to-face is the best way to go for most students. Some students do better through a hybrid or distance solution. Some students need it due to health issues. And that we want to see safe, effective education, and we think that that we should support students attending school in person if we can meet the conditions. And some of our parents have told us that they're really not sure what the conditions are that the district has committed to. And these are the conditions that were committed to in the back to school statement. The governor stating that all government employees should be either vaccinated or go through ongoing testing, and that core essential strategies, including vaccination of staff and eligible students, staying home if you're sick, correct and consistent masking, and hand hygiene are essential. People are now saying, given the increased infection, that these additional mitigation strategies may actually be essential as well. Ohana bubbles and cohorting, we're hearing from a lot of schools, this isn't practical, that kids who are thought to be in one cohort in our classroom are with other cohorts over lunch, et cetera, or on a bus, that we need improved ventilation, that we need physical distancing, and we need more screening testing and more cleaning and disinfection. We are coming up with 5 things that we think we should ask the department for right now. And I'm running by this so that any responses you have can help us in seeing if we should tweak these. We're thinking that given the growing risks and the report of inconsistent health protocols and the pleas from many families for more options, we urge the Hawaii Department of Education to, number 1, provide consistent, safe conditions for students and teachers. 2, spend emergency funds to ensure safety, meet safety protocols and contact tracing needs. 3, deliver options to Hawaii families, in-person, hybrid, and full distance learning. 4, negotiate teacher work agreements to reflect current needs. We understand the current contract doesn't have the parameters for hybrid or distance learning in it. And 5, plan for any eventuality. Know that we always have a strategic plan. We develop effective integrated systems for teaching and learning, communications, and district operations. Do any of you have any thoughts about those 5 points? Do any people disagree with them or agree with them? I'd love to have your thoughts. Stephanie? Stephanie, I think you have your hand up. Did you want to talk?
Yeah, but it was on something that you had said earlier,
Okay.
which basically is, yes, we do have a new superintendent as far as leadership, but the DOE is a very thick bureaucracy, for lack of a better word. And they have been stumbling over this stuff since day one. You can just think about the rollout of the school year last year. And, it's not one leadership. You can't just say that one change in leadership. It seems to be a problem that they have in terms of how the whole upper level of bureaucracy in the DOE is not functioning and they're dysfunctioning. But I do like your 5-point list. I especially like the last 2. Those seemed really good to me, because even for staffing for EAs and things like that, I work with the administrators and we go all the way to Plan D and Plan E. We always have other contingency plans in case something else happens. And I've been doing that since the beginning of the school year last year, in terms of being able to teach the students, whether it was all distance, trying to get them in the classroom because they couldn't learn all distance. You got to have a couple contingency plans, and you got to be flexible and able to move, because this virus brings up new issues that you can't anticipate, but you can certainly think of something that would help address the issue in a timely manner without what's happening now. So.
Thanks, Stephanie. Does anyone else have any thoughts, especially about this last 5 points I just brought up? Any feelings about them? Well, Chelsea, our coordinator who's online, maybe you want to unmute and talk a little bit about your experience with the schools.
Sure. Wasn't expecting to talk, but we had a situation that happened to my family first week of school, and we had a camping trip that we already had planned for a birthday. So did the camping trip over the weekend, 3 different households there, all family, but 3 different households. My niece came back to school on Monday and was sent home because she was exposed on Friday. Well, the child tested positive on Friday. No one was told this until Monday. So the whole weekend went by, multiple exposures. I mean, not to say thank God we were all together, but we were all together. We didn't go other places and whatnot. But it led to 3 different households having to quarantine and waiting for test result, waiting for testing, and testing is so backed up right now. It took a few days. So need more contact tracing and more real-time information being sent out. But also to comment on what we were seeing in the chat, there are some elementary schools, like Selena said, that are going to virtual or distance learning, I should say. Mililani Uka is one of them. They're looking to go on September 13th. But other than that, I'm not sure of any other elementary schools.
Okay. We see a note that we should add more about surveillance testing to our points. And I have heard a number of parents distressed about the point that Chelsea just brought up, that the district releases information about testing on Friday, but I understand that the schools themselves are releasing testing information daily. Is that what you all understand? If there's an infection in a classroom, that people will be told immediately, but that totals don't get publicized by the district until Friday. So Chelsea, I'm wondering, in the case of your school, did they know about this infection before Friday? Is there a practice of releasing the information every day? What's the schedule for notification?
So some schools do get daily alerts saying that X amount of kids were tested positive, today. They get alerts, either text message or phone calls. They don't specify which classes, if I'm sure if your child is in the class that was affected, you get sent home. But as for the situation with my family, from what I was told, the results came back on Friday after school, but still at a decent hour. But no one in the child's class was notified until Monday. So it literally left the whole weekend with all these kids possibly exposing other people.
So
without knowing.
We should maybe add something to our note about testing, about immediate notification.
That's not waiting until Monday to tell them, hey, you got to go home and quarantine for 10 days. And, there's even other issues where that particular household, that child has siblings, and the siblings also goes to the same school, but they aren't going to quarantine. They still can come to school, even though they're in the same household with someone that is quarantining now, 3 days after the fact, they still were allowed to go to school.
So we need to find out how much of that is a district decision and what is a school by school decision on the allowance of kids going back to school when their siblings are quarantined. But we will keep gathering these questions and try to get up all the answers we can. So if any of you on the call have more information or more questions to send us, please send them to info@ppshi.org, and we can get those questions and answers and do our best to make this information available to folks. Well, we are at the end of our hour. Are there any last words that anyone has to say? Well, I'd like to thank you again for taking the time to do this. We feel like we're at an uncommon moment in history where we need to do our best thinking and come together and be supportive of each other and getting the healthiest and best learning situation we can. So thank you all for joining in that. And we hope to help you in every way we can. Thank you. Aloha.